You either start serving us around here or find somewhere else to live. Those words came from Isolda Davis Mitchell, my own daughter, spoken to me like I was some deadbeat stranger. What she didn't know was that her worthless old man had been quietly turning down Hollywood millions for 50 years, and her next move was about to make that very, very public. I'm Jim Davis, and I've kept my mouth shut about a lot of things. About what really happened in a Vietnamese jungle in 1967, about the metal gathering dust in my closet, about the phone calls I ignore from Pentagon colonels and movie producers. But when your own child treats you like hired help while planning a charity event for veterans, using your story to boost her career while making you serve drinks to her corporate friends, well, that's when 50 years of silence becomes a weapon. Some people think respect comes from job titles and bank accounts. They're about to learn it comes from something else entirely. Stay with me for this one. I think you'll want to see how this plays out. And hey, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Because what happened next changed everything. Let me paint you the picture of how I'd been living for the past 8 months. After my wife Kaylin passed away in March, Isolda invited me to stay temporarily while I figured things out. That temporary arrangement quickly became me cooking breakfast every morning, doing laundry twice a week, and babysitting my 8-year-old grandson Tyler whenever Isolda and her husband Brad needed couple time. The first sign I was being disrespected came during Tyler's soccer practice. Isolda introduced me to the other parents as my dad who's staying with us while he gets back on his feet. Gets back on my feet. Like I was some deadbeat who'd lost everything. I just smiled and shook hands with everyone. The second sign was more obvious. Every Tuesday, Isolda would leave an envelope on the kitchen counter with 5 $20 bills inside. For groceries and household expenses, she'd say. Since you're not contributing financially, the least you can do is handle the shopping. $100 a week to feed a family of 4. She spent more than that on her weekly manicure appointments. But here's what really got to me. Last month, Isolda hosted a dinner party for her corporate colleagues. When someone asked about my background, she said, "Oh, Dad's retired military. He gets disability checks, so he has plenty of time to help around the house." Disability checks, like I was broken goods collecting government handouts. Her colleague, some guy in a $1,000 suit, nodded sympathetically and said, "It's nice that you're taking care of him. Not everyone would make that sacrifice." Isolda just smiled and said, "Family is family, right?" I was standing right there serving appetizers I'd prepared myself. Invisible. The truth is, my monthly pension is $863. Isolda's mortgage payment is $4,200. Her car payment is $647. I know because she leaves the bills on the counter next to my grocery money, probably to remind me how expensive it is to house a burden like me. But what Isolde didn't know was that 3 phone calls had come in that week. Phone calls I hadn't answered. Phone calls from area codes that most people wouldn't recognize, but that meant something very specific to someone like me. 202. Washington, D.C., 203. Los Angeles, California, 204. Pentagon. I'd been letting them go to voicemail for 23 years. That Tuesday evening, after cleaning up from another dinner party where I was treated like hired help, I found Isolde in her home office typing on her laptop. She looked up at me with that expression I'd grown to know too well. The look that said she was about to remind me of my place. "Dad, we need to talk." I sat down across from her expensive glass desk. Behind her hung her MBA from Georgetown and a photo of her shaking hands with some senator at a charity event. "I've been thinking about our arrangement," she said, not looking up from her screen. "It's been 8 months now, and I think we need to establish some clearer expectations." "What kind of expectations?" "Well, you're not really contributing financially in any meaningful way. And while we appreciate the help with Tyler and the household tasks, Brad and I feel like we're basically supporting you." I nodded slowly. "I see. So here's what I'm thinking. You can stay, but you need to understand that this is our house, our rules. You contribute through service, or you find somewhere else to live. It's that simple." The way she said service made it clear she wasn't talking about occasional babysitting anymore. "Service," I repeated. "Cooking, cleaning, childcare, grocery shopping, yard work, whatever we need. In exchange, you get a roof over your head and meals. It's actually a pretty generous arrangement when you think about it." I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. When had she become someone who could say those words to her own father without flinching? "And if I don't agree to these terms?" Isolda finally looked up from her laptop. Then you'll need to find somewhere else to live. I'm sorry, Dad, but that's just reality. That's when my phone rang for the 4th time that week. I looked at the screen. Area code 202. I declined the call. That night, I sat in the guest bedroom that had become my entire world and did some calculations. My pension, $863 a month. Social Security, $1,042. Total monthly income, $1,905. Average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in our area, $1,600. Plus utilities, groceries, transportation. The math didn't work, not even close. At 71 years old with a gimpy left leg from shrapnel that still aches when it rains, my options were limited. Senior housing had a 2-year waiting list. Moving in with my brother in Toledo wasn't possible. He'd made that clear after Kaylin's funeral. If I accepted Isolde's terms, I'd keep a roof over my head, but I'd lose something more important than shelter. I'd lose my dignity. If I walked away, I'd probably end up in some state-subsidized housing where they water down the soup and lock the doors at 9 p.m., where I'd spend my remaining years playing checkers with strangers and watching game shows on a community television. But there was something Isolda didn't know, something I'd been hiding for 53 years. The phone calls weren't random. They were specific. They were from people who'd been trying to reach me for decades. 2 weeks ago, the Pentagon called. The woman said, "Mr. Davis, this is Colonel Patricia Reynolds from the Office of Public Affairs. We've been trying to reach you regarding a consultation opportunity." I hung up. 3 days later, a man named Tom Bradley called from Los Angeles. "Mr. Davis, I'm a producer with Warner Brothers. We've been trying to contact you about film rights to your story. The offer is still on the table." I hung up. Last week, a journalist from the Washington Post left a voicemail. "Mr. Davis, we're doing a feature story on unsung heroes from the Vietnam era. Your name came up in our research, and we'd love to speak with you." I deleted the message. See, back in 1969, something happened in a jungle near the Cambodian border that I've never talked about. Not to Kaylin, not to Isolde, not to anyone. The Army wanted to give me a medal for it, a big one, the kind that comes with ceremonies and newspaper articles and book deals. I said no. I said no to the medal ceremony. I said no to the interviews. I said no to the book deals that started coming in the 1980s when Vietnam stories became popular again. I said no to the movie offers that came in the 1990s when Hollywood discovered my story through declassified documents. The current offer sitting in my email, unopened, is from a production company willing to pay $2.1 million for the rights to tell my story. $2.1 million. More than Isolde will make in 15 years. But accepting would mean admitting that what happened in that jungle was something special. It would mean accepting recognition I've never wanted. The thing is, heroes don't become heroes for recognition. They become heroes because someone needs saving, and they're the only one there to do it. I saved 17 men that day. 17 Americans who went home to their families because I made a choice. The Army decided that choice was worth their highest honor. I decided it was worth my silence. But now, sitting in this guest bedroom, being told I need to contribute through service to earn my place at my own daughter's table, I'm starting to wonder if my silence has been worth it. The final straw came the next morning. I was making pancakes for Tyler when Isolde walked into the kitchen, already dressed in her power suit, checking emails on her phone. "Dad, Brad's golf clubs need cleaning today. They're in the garage. Also, Tyler has practice at 4, and I need you to stay after and help pack up the equipment. The other parents rotate that responsibility, and it's our turn." She said it without looking up from her phone, like I was the help. "Also," she continued, grabbing her travel mug, "we're hosting the charity committee meeting here Thursday evening. About 20 people. I'll need appetizers, coffee service, and cleanup afterward." "What charity?" I asked. "The Veterans Day fundraiser for the local VFW. It's going to be great for my profile in the community." She was using veterans for her corporate image while treating her veteran father like a servant. That's when I realized something important. Staying silent to preserve family peace wasn't preserving anything worth keeping. My phone rang again, area code 202. This time I answered. "Colonel Reynolds," the voice said. "Thank you for taking my call, Mr. Davis. We have a proposition that I think might interest you." Isolde looked up from her phone for the first time that morning. "I'm listening," I said. "Dad, who is that?" Isolde asked, her voice sharp with that tone she used when she thought someone was wasting her time. I held up one finger and walked into the next room. "Mr. Davis," Colonel Reynolds continued, The Pentagon has been authorized to offer you a consulting position with our Veterans Affairs Liaison Office. Completely voluntary, of course, but we believe your experience could be invaluable. What kind of consulting? Advising on veterans' transition programs, specifically for soldiers dealing with delayed recognition issues. The compensation would be competitive, $120,000 annually, part-time schedule. I glanced back toward the kitchen where Isolda was still standing, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. Can I think about it? Of course, but Mr. Davis, there's something else. We've received several media inquiries about your service record recently. If you take this position, we'd provide full public affairs support to help manage any attention. After I hung up, Isolda was waiting in the doorway. Pentagon? She asked. Wrong number. Dad, don't lie to me. I heard you say Pentagon. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. When had she started talking to me like I was Tyler's age? Some administrative thing about my benefits. What administrative thing requires Pentagon involvement? Isolda, I'm 71 years old. I think I can handle my own phone calls. Her face flushed. Not when you're living in my house, you can't. I have a reputation in this community. I can't have you getting involved in some scam. Dad, you're not exactly... you don't understand how these things work anymore. People target elderly veterans with all kinds of schemes. Elderly veterans. Like I was some confused old man who couldn't tell a legitimate government call from a telemarketer. I understand plenty. Really? Because $800 a month in pension suggests otherwise. There it was. The number she'd been throwing around like evidence of my failures. That's my monthly amount, yes. And my mortgage is $4,000. My car payment is $600. Tyler's school tuition is $1,200. So when I say you need to contribute, I'm not being unreasonable. I never said you were. Then what's the problem? I set down my coffee cup. The problem is how you say it. How I say what? Everything. How you introduce me to your friends. How you talk about my pension. How you leave grocery money on the counter like I'm hired help. Isolda's jaw tightened. I'm supporting you, Dad. I'm letting you live here rent-free. You invited me here. Because I felt sorry for you. Because you were living in that tiny apartment with no family nearby and no money and no future. The words hung in the air between us. No money, no future. I see. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. Dad, I'm trying to help you, but help comes with expectations. That's how the real world works. And what expectations do you have for me? Isolda set down her coffee mug with a sharp clink. Honestly, I expect you to be grateful. I expect you to understand that this arrangement is temporary until you figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life. And I expect you to contribute in whatever way you can instead of acting like we owe you something. What do I act like you owe me? Respect. The word came out like an accusation. I shouldn't expect respect from my own daughter. You should earn it, just like everyone else. I stared at her. This was the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd driven to college, the woman I'd walked down the aisle 3 years ago. How do I earn it, Isolda? By contributing, by being useful, by not making every conversation about your hurt feelings. My hurt feelings. Yes, your hurt feelings. Dad, the world doesn't owe you anything just because you served in Vietnam 40 years ago. Plenty of people served. Most of them moved on and built actual lives. That's when my phone rang again. Area code 310. I looked at the screen. Tom Bradley, Warner Brothers. Are you going to answer that? Isolda asked. No. Why not? Because I don't want to. Another wrong number? I didn't answer. Dad, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're being secretive and weird, and I can't have that kind of instability around Tyler. Instability? Yes. Mysterious phone calls. Strange behavior. Refusing to explain yourself. What am I supposed to think? You could try trusting me. Isolda laughed. Actually laughed. Trust you? Dad, you haven't made a good decision in 20 years. You retired too early. You never saved enough money, and now you're living off government handouts at 71 years old. Government handouts. Your pension is earned, fine, but it's not enough to live on, which means you made poor choices somewhere along the way. I stood up slowly. My left leg ached, like it always did when the weather changed, like it had for 53 years. Poor choices. I'm not trying to be cruel, Dad. I'm trying to be realistic. You need to accept that you're dependent on us right now, and dependent people don't get to make demands. What demands have I made? The demand to be treated like you're still the head of a household. The demand to have your privacy respected. The demand to be consulted about decisions that affect you. Those sound like basic human dignity to me. They're luxuries you can't afford. My phone rang a third time. Area code 571. Pentagon again. This time I answered it in front of her. "Mr. Davis," Colonel Reynolds said, "I hope I'm not calling it a bad time. I wanted to follow up on our conversation." "Actually, Colonel, the timing is perfect." Isolda's eyes widened at the word Colonel. "About that consulting position, I accept." "You accept what?" Isolda asked the moment I hung up. "A consulting job." "What consulting job? Dad, what is going on?" I sat back down at the kitchen table. Tyler would be awake soon, and I didn't want him to hear this conversation. "The Pentagon offered me a part-time consulting position." I said yes. "The Pentagon doesn't just call random people with job offers." "I'm not random people." Isolda pulled out her phone. "I'm looking this up. What's this woman's name?" "Colonel Patricia Reynolds." Isolda's fingers moved across her screen. After a moment, her expression changed slightly. "There is a Colonel Patricia Reynolds in the Pentagon's Office of Public Affairs." She looked up at me. "How do you know someone at the Pentagon?" "I served in the military for 3 years. Enlisted soldiers don't get consulting offers from Pentagon colonels 30 years later. No, they don't." Isolda stared at me. "Dad, what aren't you telling me?" Before I could answer, she held up her hand. "Wait, before you give me another non-answer, I want you to explain something else." She disappeared into the hallway and came back with a piece of mail I thought I'd hidden well enough. "This came yesterday." "It's addressed to you, but it's been sitting on the counter since the mail came, and I couldn't help but notice the return address." She held up an envelope with official Pentagon letterhead. "Department of Defense, Office of the Secretary." "Why is the Secretary of Defense's office sending you mail?" I reached for the envelope, but she pulled it back. "Dad, I'm serious. I need to know what's going on. I have a security clearance for my job, and I can't have unknown federal connections in my house without disclosure." "You have a security clearance?" "Level 2, for the government contracts my company handles, which means I need to know if you're involved in something that could affect my career." I hadn't known about her security clearance. It explained a lot about her paranoia. "It's not something that would affect your career. Let me be the judge of that. What's in the envelope?" "I haven't opened it." "Why not?" "Because I know what it says." "How can you know if you haven't opened it?" I rubbed my temples. This conversation was heading somewhere I wasn't ready to go. "Isolda, there are things about my military service that I've never discussed with anyone, including your mother." "What kind of things?" "The kind that generate mail from the Secretary of Defense." Isolda set the envelope on the table between us. "Dad, you're scaring me." "I'm not trying to scare you." "Then explain. Because right now it sounds like you've been lying to me my entire life about who you are." Tyler's footsteps echoed down the stairs. Perfect timing. "Morning, Grandpa," he called out, bouncing into the kitchen in his pajamas. "Morning, buddy. Want some pancakes?" "Yes. Can you make the ones that look like Mickey Mouse?" "You bet." Isolda watched me pour batter into the pan, but I could feel her questions burning behind her eyes. "Tyler," she said, "after breakfast, why don't you go get dressed for school?" "But it's Saturday." "Oh, right. Well, go watch cartoons for a bit. Grandpa and I need to finish talking." Tyler grabbed his plate of Mickey Mouse pancakes and disappeared into the living room. "Dad." "Isolda. The envelope. Open it." I picked up the Pentagon envelope and held it for a moment. 53 years of keeping quiet was about to end, one way or another. Inside was exactly what I expected. A formal invitation to attend a Medal of Honor Society gathering in Washington. The annual reunion I'd been avoiding since 1971. I handed the letter to Isolda without a word. She read it twice. Then she looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. "Medal of Honor Society?" "Yes. You're invited to a Medal of Honor Society gathering. Every year for 53 years. Why? Because I'm a member." The words came out quieter than I intended, but they landed like thunder in the silent kitchen. Isolda read the letter a third time. "This says Annual Gathering of Recipients." "Dad, are you telling me you have a Medal of Honor?" "I'm telling you I was awarded one. I never accepted it." "You can't just not accept a Medal of Honor. You can refuse the ceremony. You can refuse the publicity. But the award itself goes into the official record whether you want it or not." Isolda sat down heavily. "My entire life you've been a Medal of Honor recipient." "Yes. And you never told anyone." That was the point. She looked at the letter again, then at me. "Dad, do you have any idea what this means?" "I know exactly what it means.
That's why I never wanted anyone to know. My phone rang again. This time I recognized the number without looking. Tom Bradley, Hollywood. Still trying after 24 years. Are you going to answer it? Isolda asked. No. Why not? Because some things are worth more than money. But I was starting to wonder if my silence had cost me more than I'd realized.
The charity committee meeting was Thursday evening, exactly as Isolda had planned. 23 people crowded into our living room, including the mayor's wife, 3 city council members, and half the board of directors from Isolda's company. I spent the afternoon preparing spinach and artichoke dip, arranging cheese platters, and setting up a coffee station in the dining room. Isolda had made it clear that this was my responsibility. Just serve and stay invisible, she'd told me that morning. These people don't need to hear your life story. The Veterans Day fundraiser was Isolda's pet project. She'd volunteered to chair the committee after discovering it would look good on her performance review. Corporate community involvement was a big deal at her firm. I listened from the kitchen as she gave her opening presentation. We've raised $8,000 so far, Isolda announced. Our goal is $15,000 by Veterans Day. The money will go directly to the local VFW for Veteran Support Services. Polite applause. Now I want to share something personal, Isolda continued. This cause is especially meaningful to me because my own father is a Vietnam veteran. I froze in the middle of refilling the coffee pot. Dad served his country with honor, and like many veterans of that era, he came home to a country that didn't always appreciate his sacrifice. More applause. I could hear the sympathy in their voices. Today he lives with us and receives a modest disability pension. It's not much, but it helps him maintain his dignity. That word again. Dignity. Like it was something she was generously allowing me to keep. Veterans like my father remind us that freedom isn't free. They gave their youth, their health, and sometimes their futures so we could live in safety. I walked into the living room carrying fresh coffee. 23 faces turned toward me with that particular expression people get when they see what they think is a charity case. Dad, come here, Isolda called out. I was just telling everyone about your service. I stood next to her chair, holding the coffee pot like a prop. Everyone, this is my father, Jim Davis. Dad served 3 tours in Vietnam. It was actually 1 tour, but Isolda had never bothered to learn the details. Dad, tell them about your experience. 23 expectant faces. I could feel their pity radiating across the room. I served from 1967 to 1970, I said simply. He's too modest, Isolda jumped in. Dad saw combat in some of the most dangerous areas. He was wounded in action and still deals with the physical effects today. She gestured toward my left leg, making my limp part of her presentation. The VA provides some support, but as we all know, it's not enough. That's why fundraisers like this are so important. More applause. I started to move back toward the kitchen, but Isolda grabbed my arm. Dad, why don't you sit with us for a few minutes? I think it would be good for everyone to hear directly from a veteran. It wasn't a request. I sat down in the chair closest to the kitchen, still holding the coffee pot. Mr. Davis, the mayor's wife said, thank you for your service. What was it like coming home from Vietnam? Every veteran dreads this question, not because the answer is complicated, but because the real answer is something civilians never want to hear. It was different times, I said. Dad's being modest again, Isolda said. He's told me stories about protesters at the airport, people spitting on soldiers. Can you imagine? I'd never told Isolda any such stories because none of that had happened to me, but it fit her narrative. How awful, someone murmured. That's exactly why we're doing this fundraiser, Isolda continued. To show veterans that we appreciate them now, even if we didn't then. A city council member leaned forward. Mr. Davis, what do you think veterans need most today? Respect, I said immediately. Absolutely, Isolda agreed. And that's what tonight is about, showing respect through action. That's when things took a turn I didn't expect. Isolda, the mayor's wife said, I have to ask. With your father's military background, have you ever considered having him speak at the actual Veterans Day ceremony? Personal stories are so much more powerful than generic speeches. Isolda's smile faltered for just a moment. Oh, Dad's not really comfortable with public speaking. Are you sure? Another committee member asked. We had a World War II veteran speak last year, and it was incredibly moving. I saw Isolda's mind working. Having her father speak at the ceremony would be great for her image. But she was also terrified I might say something that would embarrass her. What do you think, Dad? She asked, putting me on the spot. 23 people waited for my answer. I think there are more qualified veterans to speak.
Nonsense, the mayor's wife said. You served with honor. Your story matters. My story isn't very interesting. Dad, don't be silly, Isolda said, her voice getting that sharp edge it got when she felt her control slipping. You have plenty of interesting stories, another committee member spoke up. Mr. Davis, what unit did you serve with? 1st Cavalry Division. Oh my goodness, a woman in the back said. My brother was 1st Cav. What years? 1967 to 1970. He was there in 68. You might have known him. Tommy Patterson? I didn't know any Tommy Patterson, but I nodded politely. What operations did you participate in? The city council member asked. This was getting into territory I didn't want to explore. Various operations. Dad participated in some classified missions, Isolda said, clearly making things up as she went along. He can't talk about the details. That got everyone's attention. How exciting, the mayor's wife said. A real war hero right here in our living room. I saw Isolda's expression change. She was starting to realize she might have oversold my story. Well, Dad's service speaks for itself, she said, trying to regain control of the conversation. Mr. Davis, one of the corporate board members, said, What was your rank when you discharged? Specialist. And you were wounded in action? Yes. What kind of wounds, if you don't mind me asking? I gestured toward my left leg. Shrapnel, left knee and thigh. Were you decorated? The room went quiet. Even Isolda looked curious about this answer. I received some commendations. What kind of commendations? The mayor's wife pressed. I glanced at Isolda. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. The usual ones. Dad's too modest, Isolda said again. He never talks about his medals. You should bring them to the ceremony, someone suggested. People love to see the actual medals. That's when my phone rang. In my pocket, loud enough for everyone to hear. I looked at the screen. Area code 202. Pentagon. Again. Excuse me, I said, standing up. I should take this. But as I started toward the kitchen, Isolda's voice stopped me. Dad, can it wait? We're in the middle of something important. 23 faces looking at me, waiting. It's the Pentagon, I said quietly. The room went dead silent. The Pentagon? The mayor's wife asked. I looked at my daughter. Her face had gone pale. Yes, I said. They've been calling all week. You should probably answer that, the mayor's wife said, her voice suddenly very respectful. I stepped into the kitchen and answered the phone. Mr. Davis, this is Colonel Reynolds again. I apologize for calling so late, but I wanted to confirm your attendance at next week's ceremony. What ceremony? The Medal of Honor Society's 50th anniversary gathering. Your name is on the original recipient list from 1971, but we haven't received an RSVP. I glanced toward the living room. 23 people were pretending not to listen to every word. Colonel, I haven't attended any of those gatherings. Yes, sir, we're aware, but this is a special anniversary event. The President will be attending, and we're honoring all living recipients from the Vietnam era. Your presence would mean a great deal. I appreciate that, but, Mr. Davis, if I may ask, why have you avoided these events? Your record shows extraordinary valor. Operation Junction City, February 1967. You saved 17 lives that day. My hands started shaking. 17 lives. A number I'd tried to forget for 53 years. Colonel, this isn't a good time. Of course. But, sir, there's something you should know. A journalist from the Washington Post has been researching your story. He's planning to publish whether you cooperate or not. We thought you might prefer to control the narrative. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Isolda watching me, her face full of questions. What kind of narrative? The story of James Davis, Medal of Honor recipient who turned down every honor, every interview, every book deal for 50 years. The humble hero who refused to be called a hero. I'm not a hero. With respect, sir, 17 families would disagree. I closed my eyes. Colonel, I need to think about this. Of course, but Mr. Davis, one more thing. I'm actually in the area tonight. I was planning to attend a Veterans Day fundraiser in your community. I believe your daughter is involved? My blood went cold. You're here? About 10 minutes away. Would it be possible to meet in person? I think it might help clear up any misunderstandings. I looked toward the living room where Isolda was still watching me, her committee members whispering among themselves. That might not be the best timing. Actually, sir, it might be perfect timing. Sometimes these conversations are easier with witnesses. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Isolda looked at me through the kitchen doorway. Dad, are you expecting someone? I wasn't. but I had a sinking feeling I knew who it was. "I'll get it," I said. I opened the front door to find a woman in military dress uniform, colonel's insignia on her shoulders, ribbons covering the left side of her chest. She was about 50, with graying hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent her career dealing with difficult situations. "Mr. Davis?" "Yes." "Colonel Patricia Reynolds, Pentagon Office of Public Affairs. We spoke on the phone." Behind me, I heard Isolda's intake of breath. "Colonel," I said, "this really isn't a good time." "I understand, sir. But I drove 3 hours to get here, and I think this conversation is overdue." She looked past me into the living room where 23 people were staring at us in complete silence. "Is this the Veterans Day Fundraiser Committee?" "Yes, but—" "Perfect. May I come in?" Before I could stop her, Colonel Reynolds stepped into our living room. Her uniform commanded immediate attention. Every conversation stopped. "Good evening, everyone. I'm Colonel Patricia Reynolds from the Pentagon. I apologize for interrupting your meeting, but I need to speak with Mr. Davis about an urgent matter." Isolda stood up slowly. "I'm Isolda Davis Mitchell, Jim's daughter. Miss Davis Mitchell, your father and I have been playing phone tag for several weeks now." "About what?" Colonel Reynolds looked at me, then at the room full of people. "About his service record, and about why one of our nation's most decorated veterans has been hiding in plain sight for 53 years. The mayor's wife leaned forward. "Most decorated? Ma'am, are you aware that Mr. Davis is a Medal of Honor recipient?" The silence in the room was absolute. Isolda's voice came out as barely a whisper. "That's not possible." Colonel Reynolds reached into her briefcase and pulled out a folder. "February 22nd, 1967, Operation Junction City. Specialist James Davis, 1st Cavalry Division, risked his life repeatedly to save 17 wounded soldiers from an ambush near the Cambodian border." She opened the folder and began reading from an official document. "Despite being wounded himself, Specialist Davis made multiple trips into enemy fire to evacuate casualties. When his unit was pinned down by heavy machine gun fire, he single-handedly assaulted the enemy position, allowing his wounded comrades to reach safety." I could hear Isolda's breathing from across the room. "The Medal of Honor was approved unanimously by Congress and signed by President Nixon in 1971. Mr. Davis declined to attend the award ceremony." The mayor's wife spoke first. "He declined?" "Yes, ma'am. He's declined every honor, every interview, every public recognition for over 50 years. "Why?" someone asked. Colonel Reynolds looked at me. "Mr. Davis, would you like to explain, or should I—" I looked around the room. 23 faces staring at me like they'd never seen me before. Isolda looked like she was in shock. "I didn't do anything special," I said quietly. "Sir, with respect, 17 families would disagree," Colonel Reynolds said firmly. 17 men went home to their wives and children because of your actions that day." She turned back to the room. "What makes Mr. Davis's story even more remarkable is what he's turned down over the years." She pulled out another document. "Hollywood studios have offered him over $2 million for movie rights to his story. Publishers have offered 7-figure book deals. The History Channel has tried to interview him for decades." $2 million? Isolda's voice cracked. "The most recent offer came last month from Warner Brothers. $2.1 million for film rights, with Mr. Davis as executive producer." I watched Isolda's face as she processed this information. Her father, the man she'd been treating like a charity case, had been turning down millions of dollars. "But why?" the mayor's wife asked. "Why turn down that kind of recognition?" Colonel Reynolds looked at me again. When I didn't answer, she continued, "Because true heroes don't do it for the recognition. They do it because it needs to be done." She pulled out one more document. "Mr. Davis, I have your Pentagon consulting contract here. $120,000 annually, part-time schedule, helping us develop veteran transition programs." The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. "You've also been nominated for the Presidential Medal of Freedom for your lifetime of service to veterans, though I suspect you'll turn that down too." She looked around the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've been in the presence of an authentic American hero, and he's been serving you coffee all evening." Isolda stood up abruptly. "Excuse me," she said, and rushed toward the bathroom. The mayor's wife was the first to speak. "Mr. Davis, I owe you an apology. We all do." "No, you don't." "Yes, we do. We've been sitting here talking about supporting veterans while treating you like the help," someone finished quietly. Colonel Reynolds closed her folder. "Mr. Davis,
I need an answer about the ceremony. The president specifically requested your attendance. I looked toward the bathroom where Isolda had disappeared, then at the 23 people who were all looking at me with new eyes. Colonel, can you give me a moment? Of course, sir. I walked to the bathroom door and knocked softly. Isolda? No answer. Isolda, I know this is a lot to process. The door opened. Isolda's eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. She looked angry. 50 years, she said. Yes. 50 years you've been a Medal of Honor recipient, and you never told me. I never told anyone. Why? I looked back toward the living room where Colonel Reynolds was patiently answering questions from the committee members. Because I didn't want to be defined by one day in a jungle 53 years ago. One day, Dad, you saved 17 lives. I did my job. Your job was to save 17 lives. My job was to bring my men home. All of them. Isolda stared at me. The Pentagon has been trying to reach you for weeks, for years, and you've been ignoring them. I've been protecting my privacy. Dad, do you have any idea what this means, what you've been turning down? I know exactly what I've been turning down. $2 million. Money I don't need. Money you don't need. Dad, you're living on $800 a month. By choice. Isolde's voice rose. By choice? You've been letting me think you were struggling financially when you could have been a millionaire. The bathroom wasn't the place for this conversation. I could hear the committee members in the living room probably listening to every word. Isolda, we should discuss this privately. No, we should discuss this right now, in front of everyone. She pushed past me and walked back into the living room. I followed reluctantly. Colonel Reynolds, Isolda said, her voice shaking slightly. My father has been living in my house for 8 months. I've been supporting him because I thought he was financially struggling. Colonel Reynolds looked at me, then back at Isolde. Ma'am, your father has been financially independent for decades. The consulting offer is just recognition of his expertise. Financially independent, how? Miss Davis Mitchell, that's really between you and your father. Isolda turned to me. Dad, how are you financially independent? Everyone in the room was staring at us. This was exactly the kind of public scene I'd spent 50 years avoiding. Isolda, this isn't the place. This is exactly the place. These people have been listening to me talk about my poor, struggling veteran father all evening. They deserve to know the truth. She was right. They did deserve to know the truth, all of it. I looked around the room at 23 faces waiting for an answer. Then I looked at my daughter, whose entire worldview had just been shattered. You want the truth? I asked quietly. I want the truth. I walked to the center of the room, where Colonel Reynolds was standing with her folder of documents. The truth is, I've been living a lie for 8 months. Isolda's jaw tightened. What kind of lie? The lie that I needed your help. The lie that I was struggling financially. The lie that I was grateful for your charity. The room was dead silent. Dad, what are you saying? I turned to Colonel Reynolds. Colonel, would you mind sharing the details of my financial situation, since we're being transparent? She looked uncomfortable. Sir, are you sure? I'm sure. Colonel Reynolds opened her folder again. Mr. Davis has been receiving consultation fees from various government agencies for 30 years. He also receives royalties from military training materials he helped develop in the 1980s. How much? Isolda asked. That's confidential, but... Colonel, I interrupted, my daughter thinks I live on $800 a month. She deserves to know the real number. Colonel Reynolds hesitated, then said, Mr. Davis receives approximately $11,000 monthly in various payments and royalties. You could have heard a pin drop. 11,000? Isolda's voice cracked. Plus, the consulting offer of $120,000 annually would bring his total income to approximately $250,000 per year. Isolda sat down heavily. $250,000. And that's before the book and movie deals he continues to refuse, Colonel Reynolds added. The mayor's wife was the first to speak. Mr. Davis, if you don't need financial support, why have you been living with your daughter? That was the question I'd been dreading, because she invited me after my wife died, and I thought it would be good for both of us. But you let her think you were struggling? I let her think what she wanted to think. Isolda stood up again. What I wanted to think? Dad, you showed me your pension statements, $800. That's my military pension. It's not my only income. You lied to me. I never lied. I just didn't correct your assumptions. My assumptions? Isolda's voice was rising. You let me support you for 8 months while you were making $11,000 a month? You weren't supporting me. You were controlling me. The words came out harder than I intended, but they were true. Controlling you? Leaving grocery money on the counter like I was hired help. Introducing me to your friends as your struggling father. Making me serve drinks at your corporate events. I was trying to help you maintain your dignity. No, Isolda, you were trying to maintain your image. Colonel Reynolds cleared her throat. Perhaps I should leave you two to discuss this privately. No, I said. Stay. These people deserve to understand what they've witnessed tonight. I turned back to Isolda. For 8 months you've treated me like a burden, like someone who should be grateful for your charity. You've made me cook and clean and babysit to earn my keep while I was making more money than you do. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought you had power over me. The silence in the room was deafening. And now I know. Isolda's face went white. Dad, that's not fair. Isn't it? Isolda, you just spent an hour telling these people about your poor struggling veteran father while I served coffee like the help. I was honoring your service. You were using my service, for your corporate image, for your fundraiser, for your reputation in the community. I walked over to where Colonel Reynolds was standing. Colonel, I accept the consulting position. Sir, $120,000 annually, part-time schedule, I accept. That's wonderful, sir. I turned back to the room. I also accept the Medal of Honor Society invitation. I'll attend the ceremony with the President. Colonel Reynolds smiled for the first time that evening. Sir, that's tremendous news. And Colonel, about those book and movie offers? Yes, sir. I'd like you to contact Tom Bradley at Warner Brothers. Tell him I'm ready to discuss terms. Isolda made a sound like all the air had been knocked out of her. Mr. Davis, the mayor's wife said quietly, what does this mean for your living situation? I looked at my daughter. It means I'll be moving out tomorrow. Dad, wait. Isolda, you gave me an ultimatum. Serve or get out. I'm choosing to get out. But I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You assumed. You decided I was a burden, and you treated me like one. I walked to the front door and opened it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time tonight. I hope your fundraiser is successful. Veterans deserve better than they usually get. Colonel Reynolds gathered her papers. Mr. Davis, I'll have the consulting contract ready for your signature by Monday. Thank you, Colonel. As she walked past Isolde, Colonel Reynolds paused. Miss Davis Mitchell, your father is a national treasure. I hope you realize that now. After she left, I looked at the 23 people still sitting in our living room. I apologize for the disruption to your meeting. Isolda will finish the presentation without me. Isolda was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Dad, please don't leave like this. Like what? Angry. I wasn't angry. I was something else entirely. Something I hadn't felt in 8 months. I was free. I'm not angry, Isolda. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. I walked toward the stairs to pack my things. 53 years I kept quiet about what happened in that jungle. I kept quiet to stay humble, to avoid attention, to live a normal life. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked back at her. But I won't keep quiet about being disrespected in my own family. The story broke 3 days later. Washington Post, front page, the hero who said no, Medal of Honor recipient emerges after 50 years of silence. By Tuesday, it had gone viral. CNN, Fox News, NBC. Everyone wanted to interview the humble veteran who'd turned down millions to stay anonymous. I gave exactly one interview to Tom Brokaw, and only because Colonel Reynolds convinced me it would help other veterans understand that heroism doesn't require fanfare. The interview aired on Thursday. By Friday, Isolda's world had changed completely. Her first problem was work. 3 of her biggest corporate clients saw the news coverage and had questions, hard questions about her character, about how someone could treat a Medal of Honor recipient father like hired help. How did you not know? One client asked during what should have been a routine contract renewal meeting. He's your father. Isolda tried to explain, but there's no good way to explain treating a national hero like a burden. The client decided to explore other options for their account. Her second problem was social. The mayor's wife called Tuesday morning. Isolda, dear, I think it might be best if you step down from the Veterans Day Committee. Why? Well, frankly, the optics are terrible. We can't have someone who treated her veteran father that way representing our veterans fundraiser. 3 committee members quit in protest of her treatment of me. Her third problem was community reputation.
By Wednesday, everyone in town knew the story. The grocery store clerk who'd watched Isolda leave me grocery money, the neighbors who'd seen me doing yard work, the parents from Tyler's school who'd heard her introduce me as her struggling father. They all knew now that I'd been making more money than most of them while she treated me like charity. The school pickup line became uncomfortable. Other parents gave her looks. The kind of looks reserved for people who'd done something unforgivable. Her fourth problem was her husband, Brad. He came home Wednesday night with questions of his own. My boss asked me today if it was true that your dad is a Medal of Honor recipient. Yes. And you didn't know? He never told me. Isolda, he's your father. How do you not know something like that? Brad had served 4 years in the Marines. The idea of not recognizing a Medal of Honor recipient, especially your own father, was incomprehensible to him. Did you really make him serve drinks at your corporate events? He volunteered to help. He volunteered, or you assigned him kitchen duty because you were embarrassed by him? Brad slept in the guest room that night, but the biggest consequence was Tyler. My grandson had always been smart, but at 8 years old, he was old enough to understand that his grandfather was famous now. His friends at school had seen the news. Their parents were talking about it. "Mom," Tyler asked Thursday morning, "why was Grandpa sad when he lived here?" "He wasn't sad, honey." "Yes, he was, I could tell. And why did you make him do all the cooking?" "I didn't make him do anything. He told me once that he used to be a soldier, a really good soldier, but you said he was just getting disability checks, out of the mouths of babes." Tyler spent that weekend with his other grandparents. When Brad brought him back Sunday night, he had more questions. "Grandma Patterson says Grandpa Jim is a hero, and heroes should be treated with respect. She says you weren't respectful." "Tyler, it's complicated. She says there's nothing complicated about being nice to heroes." That's when Isolda finally called me. "Dad, can we talk?" "About what?" "About you coming home." "Isolda, this is my home now." I was calling from my new apartment. 2 bedrooms, downtown, 5 minutes from the Pentagon consulting office. Rent paid a year in advance. "Dad, I made a mistake." "You made several mistakes." "I know, I'm sorry. I didn't understand." "You didn't want to understand. There's a difference." "Please, Dad. Tyler misses you. Brad thinks I'm horrible. My whole life is falling apart. I'm sorry to hear that. Dad, please, I need you. Now you need me. When you thought I was worthless, you gave me ultimatums. I never thought you were worthless. Isolda, you told me I needed to earn my place at your table through service, like I was hired help." Silence on the phone. "That's not who I raised you to be," I continued. "I know. Do you? Because treating people badly when you think they can't fight back isn't a mistake, Isolda. It's character." More silence. "Dad, what can I do to fix this?" "Start by figuring out who you want to be. Then call me when you get there." I hung up and looked out my apartment window toward the Pentagon. For the first time in 8 months, I felt like myself again. 6 months later, Isolda knocked on my apartment door. Not called. Not texted. Knocked. I opened it to find her standing there with a manila envelope and red eyes. "I brought you something," she said. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter. 3 pages, front and back. Her handwriting not typed. "I've been going to counseling," she said as I read, "trying to understand how I became someone who could treat you that way." The letter was an apology. Not the quick, shallow kind people give when they want something. The deep kind that comes from genuine self-reflection. "I was so focused on appearing successful that I forgot what actual success looks like," she'd written. "Success isn't having a father who needs you. It's being a daughter who deserves respect from a father who could choose to be anywhere else." I finished reading and looked up at her. "Tyler asks about you every day," she said. "Brad's been teaching him about military history, about what the Medal of Honor means. How's Tyler doing? He's proud of his grandfather. He tells everyone at school that his grandpa is a real hero." "And how are you doing?" Isolda's voice broke slightly. "I'm learning that respect isn't something you give to people when they've earned it. It's something you give to people because they're human." She pulled out her phone and showed me a news article. "Did you see this?" It was about the Veterans Day ceremony, the one where I'd finally spoken publicly about that day in the jungle. The article mentioned that all proceeds from my upcoming book would go to veteran transition programs. "I'm proud of you, Dad, for finally accepting the recognition you deserve. And I'm proud of you for doing the work to become someone I can respect again." We stood in my doorway for a moment.
both of us understanding that our relationship would never be the same. But maybe that was good. Maybe it needed to change. "Would you like to come to Sunday dinner this week?" she asked. "As my father, not as help, as my guest. I'd like that." Tyler wants to hear more stories about the Army. "I might have a few stories I haven't told yet." Isolda smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. "Dad?" "Yeah, I love you, and I'm sorry I forgot how to show it. Some apologies are worth accepting. Some people are worth forgiving. Family is complicated. But respect shouldn't be. If you're watching this story, I hope you'll subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. And remember, everyone deserves dignity, especially the people who've earned it through service to others. Sometimes the quietest people have the loudest stories. Sometimes the most humble people have the most to be proud of. And sometimes setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about teaching people how to love you properly. Thanks for listening.